I wonder if when you do things like the Matthew Passion or the Messiah.
That is my church. I feel that is my space. And it's so welcoming. And then also the audience, I know they come from everywhere. And I feel free. There is no rules. It's only the music. And for me, that is actually enough.
Hi, this is Frank Schaeffer, and this is In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer. And I am sitting here with an old friend of mine, Camilla Tilling, who is an opera singer. And I'm going to introduce her in a weird way. I'm going to read from the first chapter of a book I wrote several years ago called Why I'm an Atheist Who Believes in God. And the opening of this book is how I met Camilla. And I started the book with this little story. And I don't want to embarrass Camilla, but there you are. I'm reading it. I spilled my wine on a goddess and lived to tell the tale. Actually, I spilled wine on a Swedish opera star, the lyric soprano Camilla Tilling. I was flying home to Boston from my mom's funeral. Camilla and I met because we were flying economy, and I like to hope because mom wanted us to. And then I continue telling the story in the opening chapter here of how I had a kind of an odd feeling that my mother had sort of introduced us, because my mom was a music aficionado, took me to classical concerts from the time I was 5 years old. We lived in Switzerland, used to get a season ticket to the Montreux Music Classical Festival. So I grew up hearing very famous musicians like Clara Haskell, the pianist, and Yehudi Menuhin, and all sorts of people. Just took it for granted. And you know how kids are. You always think everybody's being raised this way. And then years later, I found out that not everybody had a mother, especially not an evangelical missionary mother, who believed that her child ought to know the classical canon. And my dad was playing records next door in his bedroom to drown out the sound of the students that we had in our living room under his bedroom talking while he was working, preparing his sermons and lectures. And so the day after my mom's funeral, to be on a plane sitting next to an opera singer, which was exactly the person my mother would have chosen to travel with. And Camilla was sort of minding her own business because she was preparing to do Mahler Fourth in Boston with the Symphonieorchestra 2 days later, or starting rehearsals the next day, and wanted to save her voice. But we wound up talking for 6 hours, most of the flight. And I don't think I ruined the concert, because 2 days later, she also sent tickets up for Jeannie and me to go to the concert. And then later, like some sort of dream come true, invited us to dinner with the conductor, Bernard Haitink, and his wife. And then we all sat around talking. So that's a long time ago. And now Camilla is here as a guest in my home, and her son is actually going to my granddaughter Lucy's high school today, trying out an experience of American school. He's in Switzerland where he goes to school. He's 14, she's 14. So they're off there today. And I thought I would take the opportunity of talking with Camilla about her life as an artist, and her life as an opera singer, and her life as a musician and a mother and someone who travels a lot, and just a good friend of ours. And you don't have to treat this too seriously. We can just talk like this. And Ernie my producer will edit it and make us both look good if there's a problem. Good. First off, what are you doing other than visiting me for the next 10 days? What are you doing here in the States?
So this is actually a quite long stay. I will be here a whole month, a bit longer actually. Normally you do that for operas, but I just happen to have consecutive concert engagement. Yeah. So I was in Atlanta doing a Matthew Passion, and then I flew up here and I was meeting my son at the airport together with you. Yeah. And now we have Easter with your family, and then we're going to go back to Atlanta. I'm going to do a little recital that I'm very excited about. And then a week after that, we're flying to Portland, and I'm doing Mahler 4.
In Portland again, with the symphony orchestra there?
With the symphony orchestra, and music that I'm learning only for that concert by a composer called Goluboff. It's 3 orchestra songs for soprano.
You know, I've had a couple incredible musical experiences because of you. One was seeing you in Paris in an opera.
The magic flute.
Yeah, the magic flute, which was fantastic. But I think if I had to pick out of every classical music event I've ever been to in my life, the one that made the biggest impression on me ever, and that was something you did in New York a few years ago with the Berlin Symphony Orchestra, which was also, I think, the Matthew Passion, and you sang the soprano thing there. And they did an odd thing. They rebuilt the whole configuration of the concert house in Berlin. I think it's in Berlin, right?
Yeah, the Berlin Philharmonic.
Yeah, and they rebuilt it in the American Armory, the Armory building there. And I think, didn't you only give 2 concerts because...
2 performances. And in the end, they were calculating that it would have been less expensive if they had flown the whole audience to Berlin instead of making the orchestra fly to New York.
And as I understood it, the reason they only gave 2 performances is because when you bring the Berlin Symphony Orchestra anywhere, it's a huge undertaking. Because they're very, I guess, very expensive and very involved, but it was unbelievable. And who was the conductor?
That was Simon Rattle.
Yes, I remember.
And it was a staged version by Peter Sellers.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
And everyone was extremely close to one another. And the choir did everything by memory. And also parts of the orchestra was playing without the music. And I was next to the flute in a very, very beautiful aria about the love, Ausliebe. I was so close to the flute player that I could when he was breathing, it was like blowing on my ears. And it's one of the most important musical experience I've ever had.
And I was sitting in the audience with Anders, your husband, who often stays home and helps takes care of your kids while you're on the road. You have a great partnership with him. He's a musician who played professionally viola, and then has taken these number of years to give you the opportunity to do what you do, which is pretty wonderful. Yeah,
we're doing this completely together. It's a team, and you need to have this support, and to find someone that is happy in this deal is amazing. I am very fortunate that I met him.
Yeah. So let me just spin back to when we first met. Well, I think one of the reasons we got talking, first of all, because you're a nice person, when someone sits down next to you, spills wine on your lap, and you're very gracious and saying, oh, it's fine. And one of the funny things you said to me, I don't know if you remember it, but right off, you said, oh, don't worry, I was raised on a farm. I don't mind some dirt or whatever on my jeans. And then you described the farm, and you said if you went down a paved road, when the road ended and you went down a sort of a dirt track at the end of that, and one thing led to another. And I found a very strange thing because of my own evangelical strange background. You started telling me the story of your life, which involved having been brought up in a very closed, small church group in Sweden. And of course, as an American, you think of Sweden as very secular. You don't think of little fundamentalist Christian groups off in the woods, but that's sort of
they do exist.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you were in one.
Yes, and when I realized actually that the people that took care of our church actually was influenced by your father, it was like, to meet you, I could actually understand what I have been a part of. And it's serendipity and your mother's fault.
Serendipity and my mother's fault, who passed away, but did bring us together. And then recently, fast forward, you've got some person you're working with who's a pianist, I think, that actually, are you going to be working in Atlanta with him,
yes,
or you already did this?
No, maybe, I mean, the 16th of April, we are having this recital in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And his parents is also a part of this story.
And he knew who we were when we said you.
I've never met this person at all. And after 2 minutes, we were down to that he had a book that you have been written at his bed's table and was reading it at the moment. Yeah,
so it's a crazy small world. But anyway, one of the things that you were telling me when I got your life story was how the expectation for you in this small Christian group was basically you're going to sing in church, maybe teach music to kids in schools.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
And then you kind of went off and became a big deal singer. If you Google Camilla here, go, for instance, to YouTube and look up, what year did you sing at the Nobel Prize? 2017?
You know better than
I think it was 2017. But anyway, at the musical part of it, with the king and queen of Sweden sitting there, Camilla is belting out a piece of Bach, I think.
Yes, I did.
Unbelievable, with the trumpet that goes with it. It's just a crazy piece of music. And I think you told me I was the first person to either text you or call you after, besides your mother.
Exactly.
And say, hey, I just saw this. I was watching live on YouTube. But anyway, if you go to YouTube and you look, I think 2017 Nobel Prize, and
the ceremony,
scroll down to about 36 minutes in, there's music, and you'll see Camilla in her true form, which is not sitting there with me in my little studio, but very glamorous, dressed up and looking fabulous with the royalty from Sweden, and then you went off and had dinner with them. So you live
big dinner.
Yes, you live a very fancy life. You
a very not fancy life at the same time.
This is your unfancy part.
I don't know.
Right here. Yeah. So anyway, we've been going back and forth for years. And so one thing that I'm very interested in your own, a couple things, but let's start just with our spiritual journeys. You know, as the title of my book, Why I'm an Atheist Who Believes in God, describes, I've kind of given up the intellectual structure of Christianity. I don't believe in it. I don't think it's true. On the other hand, I have a real spiritual sense in my life. I find myself get up in the morning. I still pray for my family. I don't know who, if anyone, hears those prayers. I certainly don't interpret it the same. And I'm just wondering, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but one time you described doing the St. Matthew Passion, I think you were saying that sometimes you actually felt, and I'm going to get you to say this and not me, but you almost feel not so much Bach, but that you're in touch with something larger than yourself. How did you put that?
I feel that it's not a lot of things that I'm actually able to make a contact with people as with music. So I don't know, I feel like a messenger that even if it's not about Christianity or anything else, I am the one who is serving the words from the composer or from the poet, of course, to the audience. So I feel like a messenger, and in a way, angels are very often messengers. I'm not an angel, but I have often done parts in operas and in passions as an angel. And I think that is privilege, and I feel honored, and I just want to be nothing, and that just the words go through and that people can get what they need.
Yeah, and you've also, you brought up the thing about hearing the flutist and feeling the breath on your neck almost.
That was Mr. Payud, by the way, the flutist in the Berlin Philharmonic. He's made tons of records and he's fabulous.
Yeah, yeah. And you talk about how feeling that closeness within the orchestra, but it seems to me that in terms of your own background, that sometimes when you're doing things like Bach, and I saw you do the Messiah with the New York Philharmonic, in where were we? Not Carnegie Hall, but
no, it's at the Lincoln Center.
We were at the Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
And I saw you down there. Jeannie and I have gone to a lot of your performances. And you always, we went up to the dressing room with you afterwards, and two things struck me. One, you were absolutely alone. So, you know, when you're watching something like an opera or a performance, you assume that somehow afterwards they're all going to be in this kind of group. But actually, a lot of the performers you're lonely, and we kept you company. We cracked a bottle of champagne.
We did. My gift I could share.
The orchestra had given you. There was champagne and glasses and a bottle. And if we hadn't been there, you would have been by yourself.
I would have left it there, because I can't bring it back home either, because it's too big.
That's right.
But when I was growing up at this farm, there were no houses close to me. So I was already then back training without knowing how it is to be alone. And I don't feel alone, but I have missed a lot of normal life, you know, funerals or weddings or only birthdays or Christmas Eve. I've even been alone somewhere in a hotel because people need music.
Because you're performing.
And I'm performing, but performing the
Messiah, you'll never be home for Christmas as long as you keep doing
exactly.
that. when I saw you in Paris doing the magic flute, then after that we went out and had a wonderful dinner. But
we're really spoiled.
We're very spoiled. But what I wanted to say is I was wondering, given your own religious background that you've somehow left, I kind of rebelled against mine. I don't think you're rebelled so much as went away, but I wonder if when you do things like the Matthew Passion or the Messiah.
That is my church. I feel that is my space, and it's so welcoming. And then also the audience, I know they come from everywhere, and I feel free. There is no rules. It's only the music, and for me, that is actually enough.
Yeah.
More than enough.
And do you feel more of an affinity with what you might call sacred music when you sing that? And the Mahler 4 is the same, because it's a child's vision of getting to heaven, which, by the way, 3 days after my mother's funeral, I'm watching you sing a poem about the first day in heaven for a child. And that was just crazy. I mean, talk about serendipity. I've just buried my mother. She loves music. I've just met Camilla. Jeannie and I are sitting there, and she's singing a poem by a child who's just arrived in heaven. So anyway, go figure. But I just wonder if those things speak through you somehow on a deeper level than what you might call secular work.
No, but the people who are doing the casting for things, they always choose me to these kind of characters. It's not me making the decisions. So I am kind of in this. They think, oh, this voice, this kind of character fits. To tell these Christianity stories. And I feel just fortunate. I was a bit annoyed that they don't think I'm sexy and I could be like a real woman. But in a way, after being annoyed about that they don't cast me as Carmen, I thought that, wow, they are casting me like angels, and angels are actually superhero men. It's not women. It's like Gabriel, Michael, and they come there with a sword and they just say the message. This is what God says. So I feel quite heroic. Actually.
Not so much magic flute. You weren't an angel, but no. You're still the good guy, though.
I've never been the bad guy, and I think I would be quite good at it.
Well, if there's anybody out there watching who wants to cast Camilla in an opera,
I would like to explore that part of the art, but I'm fortunate, I'm happy, and I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, even if I didn't have a clue that this was what I would end up doing.
Just to back up a little bit, because it ties in with what I've been writing about my own life in my memoirs, like my Crazy for God and my journey out of evangelicalism. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I don't know how much you want to say about this, but you got some resistance from your family and from other people in your church environment that you had gone into the big bad secular world of opera instead of, quote unquote, the Lord's work in church. Was that true, or am I just reading my experience?
No. This was hard. We had a tradition. I got married when I was 20.
Right.
And that was before I knew. I was aiming to become a singing teacher. And then things developed, and I got my first job. And I want to protect my former husband, but after I'd done the first production, he said, okay, now you try that. Please become normal, and please become what you told me that you would do, be a singing teacher. And it was really hard for him, and I just realized I cannot become normal. I think this is my destiny. I need to do this. We got divorced, and then it was really hard for the church, because I was kind of on stage leading in hymns and songs, and I was like a role model for younger people. And then they thought that I would be a bad influence.
Right, because you were divorced and you weren't doing that good Christian woman.
Absolutely. I went to the opera and was singing Rosina in the Barbiere, and it just made people laugh and have a good time. And also my brother found that really difficult. So it was many years that we didn't have contact.
Well, you and I compared notes when we were sitting on that Swiss flight coming back from Zurich, and I was telling you how my sister one of my older sisters didn't speak to me for 7 years after my novel Portofino was published. And again, it's a work of humor, it's light, but she thought that it was mocking the faith we'd grown up in, and she took it, no one else took it that way, but she did. You know, we didn't speak for 7 years, and that's why, you know, when we had that connection, it's like there were so many things where your life and mine were tracking in ways that sometimes people don't understand.
I was like, you know, confronted with words from the Bible that I have chosen the world instead of God.
Yes.
And like I was doomed.
Yes, as we both are. But let me put it this way. I'd rather be with Camilla than a lot of my evangelical friends. And so if we're going to spend eternity together, that's okay. You can still sing wherever we wind
Maybe
up.
they are very alone in the eternity because no one will get there.
No one's going to get there.
I don't know.
So let me, when you were this training to be a singing teacher, undiscovered, obviously you had a good voice, because very quickly after that you were on the stage, I think at Covent Garden or somewhere, doing things. But wasn't there some story where you took a trip to London? And I mean, you know, I don't want to make something up, but were not discovered, I don't know how to put this, weren't you on some sort of school trip with Teachers College, and then you met people in London during that trip, or how did that work?
Basically, we had a master class back home in Gothenburg where I did my studies. And this master, Margaret Kingsley, she was from London. And I had a scholarship that was meant to be used for studies. And I didn't know where to go. And I told her, and she said, please, I think we have a position at the Royal College in London that I could check out that, and I kind of sneaked in. So I had my last years of studies after 8 years in Sweden. I had 1 year in London, and that was the equivalent of 8 years for me. It was like
crash course.
And that opened up all doors. And of course, there are a lot of people involved in that. But
was Sir Barenboim in charge of things at that point?
No, it was, they came, we did a production, all kids in school of Le Nozze di Figaro, The Marriage of Figaro, and I did Susanna, only like 2 acts of 4. And people came from the Royal Opera House, and they invited me on the spot for to sing in the Rosenkavalier. Sophie, it's a beautiful little girl, and since then my calling cards in opera houses has been like Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro and this part Sophie. So
and I thought Susanna in Paris.
Yes, you did.
And that particular production put Susanna's face up on a giant screen. That was a good production, by the way. Didn't you think so?
Yes.
I loved it.
Yes, it's a really, really good one.
And I came in sitting, I'm going to see my friend Camilla on stage, and then before the curtain goes up, or right when it does, here you are, your face. They must have filmed that before.
Yes,
because
they did in this kind of green room, or is it blue?
And then they put you up on the screen, but your face was literally sort of 70 feet across. I mean, picture the biggest screen you've ever seen a movie on, and there she is in close up and sharp focus, and I'm thinking, holy shit. That's my friend. So it was crazy. I got, starstruck there. But and the funny thing is, because you give me these comp tickets, I'm always sitting with family of other people.
Yes. So everybody said, oh.
So the guy next to me was the father of one of the girls singing in The Three Sisters. In the Magic Flute. Who are those? What's the proper name for them?
The Three Ladies.
The Three Ladies. So the father's one. And I was saying, well, I know Susanna, I'm here because, so we were all family. But anyway, it was terrific. But that was your first opera role after the beginning there?
Well, I think, I've done this for 20 years, and I get things mixed up.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But
and these days, are you doing, I think, when was the last opera, wasn't it? Didn't you do an opera in Sweden as the last opera? Spain. Weren't you in Spain? You called me from Spain.
I did. But I also last year, I have extended my characters. I'm not an angel any longer. I am also a nun.
Okay.
So I fit into nuns.
Yeah.
So I did Suor Angelica. It's a Puccini opera. It's magic, a wonderful opera. And
is that what you were in Spain for?
In Spain, I did La Damoiselle in Nu.
Yeah.
It's a piece by Debussy, and it was just a part of the evening.
Yeah.
And after that, they did Honecker, the Jeanne d'Arc, and with an actor doing the main part and the choir. So, but in that part, I was also like an angel from heaven, or a lady in heaven waiting for my lover.
How have you, I want to change the subject for a minute. What is it like being a parent and a mother and on the road so much? I know something about this because the year before Jeannie and I moved from Switzerland to America, one of the reasons we came here is a lot of my speaking engagements were here. And that was back in the days I was still doing the big time evangelical circuit. And then years after that, after my novels came out, I started doing talks in secular venues, mostly in universities and so forth. So I know what it's like to be on the road and leave small children at home. One year I was away 6 months.
I know about that.
Of the year. And Anders is taking care of the boys. And I, by the way, have visited you in Switzerland a couple of times. I think one time I was there, Anders was alone with the boys. You were somewhere else, and then you came back halfway through the visit. So I got a little taste of him cooking for them and doing the whole thing. And Anders is a great friend as well, by the way. He's a terrific guy. And we all get on. But I wonder, has that been a sort of struggle and heartbreaking for you, or have you managed it?
The beginning was really nice, actually. Until they started school, we were traveling together. So we were just in the car with all toys and stuff, and we're traveling around and rented like an apartment that fitted us all. My mom often came to visit. Yeah. And when they started school, when they turned 6, I stopped opera. Yeah. I didn't do any opera. I just did concerts.
Why was that?
Because in opera, you have to stay for 2 months to do the preparation at one place. And if you do concerts, you go in the beginning of the week, you start to rehearse and you do the concerts in close to the weekend, and then you go back. Yeah. So then I was completely alone, and you just have to manage. Yeah. Sometimes I felt that the boys were calling me daddy when I came back home instead of mommy, just kind of giving me this slightly guilt. Where have you been?
Yeah. And, I find in my own experience, I don't know if you share this, but if you got back and they were particularly hitting some problems, like my son Francis for a while was dyslexic. By the way, he's been a teacher for 30 years now. He worked all that out. But sometimes I would find myself thinking, well, somehow this is harming things, or they're having problems because of me. But I don't know whether you've ever experienced any sense of trying to juggle the two things and feeling guilty. But on the other hand, you earn your living for your whole family. So it's not as if this is it's the most serious kind of thing you can imagine, combining art and
what I have destroyed the most. I think that none of them want to become a musician.
Is that right?
That's right.
Because they've seen the light.
And I can see that they actually have the talent. Both of them are very musical, but they don't like that kind of lifestyle. Yeah. So that I have destroyed, but maybe it comes in next generation. Who knows? But I think that we planned our life that they have never ever been alone. There have never been another person in our house. There always been one of us there. Yes. And I've also had times where I've been there for months or for weeks, and the pandemic I was there for 2 years, not going anywhere. And it's actually, we are very close.
I think you even took them to Spain to a musical thing after the pandemic where you all got COVID.
Yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. Yes. I'm trying to, and also now I have my oldest son, Adam, and he will be with me for 3 weeks.
Here in the States.
In the States.
Which is what they're
following
doing.
Me. And this is wonderful.
And we got up this morning and Eugenie and you were making his school lunch. And then he went up the road to drive to school with my granddaughter, Lucy. Well, she's not driving. She's 14 too, but with her mom. So we're folding you all into our life a little bit here. Let me ask you this about the general business of music. You were talking about COVID. Did you have a hard time after COVID getting your career going again? Because everything had been canceled.
It is really hard. Now I feel I'm 52.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm 52. I'm thinking about the young people that is just out of college and trying to start up their career. They have a really hard time. I've done this already for so long, and I feel blessed. And I also know that my career cannot go on forever. So I'm already in this, that what shall I add or explore and make now? I want to go in more to be a mentor, or to say mentor?
Yeah.
Help people that are going to do what I've done. But at the same time, the pandemic made me fall in love with music even more, and not music with distance. I want people to be close and really do music together. And I hope to go on singing as long as anyone asks for anything.
Well, so far you're still on the big stage. Your career doesn't seem to have tapered off any, so you seem to be in high demand still. And when was the last
Fingers
time?
crossed.
Fingers crossed. But you were recently back in Berlin, weren't you?
Yes, I was there actually with the Academy. So they have like a chamber music hall, and I did music that is also very rare. And that is also one thing. I am so curious, so I want to learn as much music as I possibly can until I'm dead. It's so interesting, and my instrument is so many compositions. It's not like being, you know, playing the clarinet or fagot, where it's just a couple of concert things you can do. My repertoire is like dig in. It never ends, and I want to know as much as possible.
Have you? I forget. I think you've been in Japan and China.
I've been not to China, but I've been to Japan several times. And I want to go back. I love.
Because speaking of inspiring young people, Jeannie and I happened to be in Perugia in Italy one summer, and there was a youth music festival that apparently is very well known. It's always crazy, isn't it, in life, that you stumble across something that everyone knows about, and then you've never heard of it, and then there you are, and it's like, okay, where have I been? But we were noticing, coincidentally, we asked one of the directors, who happened to be an American who comes over to Italy to help, if it was a festival for people from China and Korea and Japan, because everybody, the pianists particularly, all seemed to be from one of those countries. And he said, no, it's just, you know, if it wasn't for the young people in Japan, Korea, and China right now, you know, in terms of the classical canon and tradition, you know, we wouldn't have a festival, because they're doing more music than, you know, they're more into the Western classical canon than a lot of young people in our own countries, which sort of brings up a point in voice and singing. There's a lot of Chinese and Japanese and Korean pianists out there. Are you running, when you go to Korea or wherever, or Japan?
They're really, really good voices.
Like if you do Beethoven's Ninth sometimes.
I've been there doing that, and the whole choir, it was almost like 200 people, always singing by heart. And
200 Japanese people in the choir.
I had the tenors behind me, and I was like, oh,
so they're good.
I mean,
it's not just
soloists, and they are so good, so they are singing in the choir, but I'm sure that they would be able to sing the part of the tenor in the quartet that is in front of them. So they are.
Is it just my impression? Because when I go to classical concerts in the West, and say I like to be up in a balcony. One time I was in Boston with the kids watching you do Peer Gynt, and I remember we were up in the balcony, and you came out and said hi to them, which was great. But when you look down, there's a lot of gray hair.
In the orchestra, you mean?
No, in the audience. Maybe the orchestra too.
Yes, but why not? I think we are all having different periods in our life, and maybe you're busy.
But when I see concerts that are recorded in Japan, for instance, it seems to me the audience there often skews younger than in the West. Is that true? Do you think classical music's in better shape in the future in non-Western cultures?
We're getting older, all of us. So we're going to have a huge audience because we're all going to add 10 more years of loving classical music.
Well, as long as some of the younger people who aren't into classical music get into it at some
point. They
will.
I'm sure. I'm sure, because if you are a person that are curious, and it's so much music around in films and in games even that has a classical theme, and they know them even if they don't know exactly what they're called.
Yeah. Well, in the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s, the scores and for a lot of movies, the music track for the film, a lot of it went electronic, and then all of a sudden, with John Williams and other people, I think Spielberg helped a lot in that. All of a sudden, it was full orchestral scores again. And now, you'll hear a piano playing, a solo piano, you'll hear orchestral music. You have some electronics, but even in these comic book movies that get made, and all the made-for-television stuff on HBO and all these other streaming services, the classical music and the orchestra and the musicians are all back there. It's like everybody's gone back to instruments.
If I got into classical music, anyone can get into classical music.
Why?
I was like born behind a stone in the woods. I didn't have a clue. I didn't listen to classical music whatsoever until I was like 20.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about my little son. He could choose music, learning for the piano. He came back home, Mom, this Moon Sonata, Beethoven something. It's so nice music, and I think it's gonna stick into our system. It's great music.
Mm-hmm. A question I have for you on that sort of is related to that. But I think people would be interested who are listening. By the way, In Conversation with Frank Schaeffer, I'm Frank Schaeffer. This is Camilla Tilling. Just to reintroduce her, I forgot we were doing a thing.
How long are we going to talk?
I don't know, a while. Maybe we'll have lunch here. But I have a question for you, just sort of an inside look. What is the world of classical music like? And I'll give you a context. Okay, the world of university speaking, when I go do a gig at some university, whether it's a famous one or a small one, you get there, someone picks you up. You
meet practical. How does it work?
Yeah, but I mean, you just hope the housing is decent and they're actually going to pay the honorarium they said they would. And, shall I ask for the check because they haven't handed me one yet? And then you're with academic people who tend sometimes, sorry, everybody out there, but to be rather brittle. They'll let you know right away whether they feel important or not. There's a kind of a little bit of a tension there because you're an outside speaker, and then then you relate to the students. Are you going to be a good guy and relate? And then you come back, that sort of thing, or bookstore signings and you hope somebody's in the line, or dealing with publishers. Will my agent call me and get me a deal? There's a lot of not stress exactly, but it never from the inside pans out to be something where the actual job part of the job, I'm not talking about when you're on stage singing, that's a different deal, but the work to get the work to make this all roll. What's that like? I'm not fishing for anything. I'm just curious. What's that really like?
It's very lonely, and you just need to start practicing somewhere, and then continue practicing and practice. I was just out in your barn singing before we started this. Yes. And if I don't do that, I get super nervous and I want to prepare. I know about the concert often more than a year ahead. So I prepare and I leave the music for some weeks. I come back to it, and I need to do everything that it turns in to become me. And I need time, and I don't actually have a coach. I don't have a singing teacher. I'm my own singing teacher, and I basically, after breakfast every day, I go out in my room where I have a piano, I have a mirror and all my music, and space enough to lie down on the floor and do some exercises, because my body is my instrument. And when it comes to work, I have an agent that was already connecting with me as a student. So I have let her, it's the same person for almost 25 years now, and she's doing all the practical things for me. They are calling her, do you have someone that you think would be able to do this job? Or they call especially, we've had Camilla here before, would she be interested to do this repertoire? And I basically go out for walks, memorizing, trying to get different languages. I'm like a parrot. I'm not talented in languages, but I do imitate, and it gets into my system somehow by repeating. I'm a person that likes to practice and be in my own bubble. I think I could be a group person because we do that when we do opera, but the main part of my job is just to do the boring things. Go in, repeat, do it again. It's like knitting. You knit on a sweater for like a month or two, and it's every single stitch. And in the end, it turns out to be something, but it's still this one single thing. That is my life. And it's like the party starts when the audience come into the concert hall, and we finally, something maybe you prepared for 2 years, you can share.
And do it.
Yeah.
Last question. When someone out there is trying to be the next Camilla Tilling and have a worldwide audience and have an agent in London who sends her out for all these wonderful things, and you're saying it's hard to get going now.
Yeah.
Two questions, and sorry, my memory is so shot that I'll forget the second part. So
you're forgetting. You're not forgetting anything. You remember all our shows we've been meeting.
But they're all burnt. They're burned into my brain. You're a big deal in our lives. Nobody else gives me free tickets to wonderful classical concerts all over the planet. But I want to know if there's some young people out there. You were saying it's more difficult. You know what, if next time you're on an airplane there's a young woman sitting there who has talent and is trying to do something, what would you be telling her during the flight if she spills a glass of wine on your lap and you meet?
In a way, I've actually already met that girl, because 2 years ago I was doing a concert, and after the concert this young girl came up to me and said, I've won a competition and I'm learning the same music that you are doing. Could I get some coaching from you? And I invited her and her husband to our home, and we are now close, and she is so talented, much more talented than I ever have been. And she's not gonna be the new Camilla Tilling, because you need to be, but she's gonna do exactly what I have sung, and I'm just there to support her. And if there would be other
Where is she from?
She's Swedish, and my agent have been taking her on because I said, don't miss this chance. She's fantastic.
Where did you meet her?
We met up in Sweden. Her name is Johanna Wallroth. Johanna Wallroth. Don't ever forget that name. She's fantastic.
That's nice. It brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
It's so nice that you're pushing somebody young like that. Good place to finish. Ernie, my producer, thank you. And I hope you all enjoy this. Camilla Tilling, you can look her up, and her music is everywhere. You will see her somewhere near you if you happen to be near the Berlin Philharmonic or wherever she's doing her thing. So thanks a lot, Ernie. Thank you, Camilla. And
thank you,
stay ready to your next concert.
Yeah.
I'm going to click us off.
Yeah.
All right. And thank you for watching and listening. Please like this and share it with people. Thanks. Bye. Hey, Ernie, you'll need to edit this in, because when I finished, Camilla wanted to ask me a couple questions.
Yes, I want to take the opportunity because I'm so curious to know what music means to you.
Okay.
And how does it help you in your normal life? When do you listen to music and why?
All right. So Jeannie and I dug out all our old vinyl the other day, and I got a turntable, and we started playing the Beatles albums that we met over, the actual albums. which was Abbey Road, which is why I met Jeannie, because she was upstairs in the communal dining room in Libri Fellowship in 1969. And she said to me, "Have you heard the new Beatles album?" "I have it downstairs." And 53 years together, we're still listening to it. So first of all, music means to me, going back to those years, that I got myself a wife, because Jeannie and I both love the Beatles. The difference being that she saw them live in concert 3 times in California.
Did she?
She saw the Rolling Stones live 3 times. I mean, she was, I call her my San Francisco hippie princess, but she really grew up, at the hottest moment in rock and roll, seeing all the bands and, everything you've ever heard of. She's seen the Cream, everybody, and always a couple seats away from Eric Clapton, whoever it would be. So that was one kind of role of music in my life, the social role. My father played the whole classical canon all the time on his record player, crashing through the wall loud in my little Swiss chalet. So I grew up, I didn't necessarily know the names of the composers, whether it was Schubert or Schumann or whoever, but it's rare that I hear a piece of classical music that doesn't evoke a nostalgic feeling for me. So I don't even know where my experience of music begins and where it's inherited from my parents, my mother, who took us to all these concerts. But it's, for me, the warmest part of my relationship to my parents. It's the one part of my relationship, not the theology. They traveled a lot and were on the road, and I was left in this weird commune a lot, unlike you with Anders, nobody taking care of me, an older sister maybe. But all my connection with mother and dad through the music that they played and they loved is 100% pure. It's full of light. It's exactly like my relationship with my little dog Zip. It's one of the few things that I have no second thoughts about. So when I put on, Yehudi Menuhin playing in his quartet, and I can remember seeing him and he's playing the same music that I remember, I don't even know where the nostalgia begins and the beauty ends or what is what. It's everything that's best about my life from my childhood is to do with the music that my parents shared with me.
Would you say that you would come into a flow of music, so you get inspired to just
all the time?
Yeah, because that's the same with me. Yeah. I feel like it makes me feel I become a better person.
Yeah, me too. And then I have another use for music, and that is I write every day sitting right here. And I get up at 3 a.m. to write. And by around 4:35, I'm starting to flag. And especially if it's something I'm editing, not creating fresh, I'll find a piece of music that's like a third cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So I use the music, and sometimes it's classical. Sometimes it's Tom Petty playing, some piece of his, or a piece of Bob Dylan, or a bit of the Beatles, something that not only wakes me up, but kind of evokes a feeling that takes me a little out of myself. So it's not like me sitting here bored re-editing this thing again, but it's me plus the feeling the music's giving me that makes me look at everything with fresh eyes. Because I'm getting, if I read something, I wouldn't do that. It's just more words on paper. But to hear the music, I borrow their energy and creativity for a few minutes, and then it becomes mine. I don't know how to, it's a different feeling. It's like I become a little bit of a different person because I'm hearing it through them. So that's another area that music means something to me. And then lastly, with my grandchildren and my children, music means a lot, because I get, with my kids and especially now my grandchildren, sometimes the way I put it to Jeannie is I think we're winning. And that's when something happens, like my granddaughter Lucy texts me from France where she's on a school trip, and it's like, hey, she's in the middle of a busy thing and she's thinking about me. Well, I find that with my oldest granddaughter Amanda, when I say, oh, you were in Italy, what were you doing? And traveling with her boyfriend. And she says, oh, we went to this and that, we went to an opera, we went to a concert, we went to a ballet. And it's like, we're winning, because obviously she's looking to the same sort of things for pleasure that my mother passed on to me. And I never say to her, hey, this is your heritage. It's just, she's making choices as an adult now in an aesthetic direction that is carrying something on. I mean, it's like you're passing something on. So someday when I'm gone, Amanda's going to hear a piece of music she heard with me, and she's going to make that association. And I hope she gets the same warm flood of emotion that I get remembering my mother and father when I hear you, for instance, singing in the Messiah.
Mm.
And all of a sudden it's like, hi, Mom,
Mm.
through Camilla, through the music, through Handel.
Mm.
And that's the deepest sort of level. So, you know, that, and then just the aesthetic appreciation.
Yeah, I mean, music make us remember things better. If there is music around and you hear it somewhere else, you can, oh, I remember I heard this when we did this.
Hey, Nora, my little 8-year-old granddaughter, who's going to turn 9 in a couple of days here, said to me the other day, right out of the blue, in the car driving home from school, she likes to ask me questions. She says, Ba, what would you rather, have to agree to never watch television or a movie again in your life, or never be able to hear another piece of music?
She asked that.
Asked that, age 8. And I said to her, that would be tough. I said, but in the end, I would have to choose the music because I can live without movies. I said, but if you took music out of my life, it would be the worst thing that I could imagine losing. And she came right back. Boom, she had already thought about it. She said, me too.
So music is food for love.
Food for love. Exactly.
Yeah, we need it as much as a good steak.
And the other day we were in Boston together, and she had gone down because she wanted to go to her favorite play park. And I happened to see at the Emerson Theater that they were premiering a crazy musical you may have heard of called Six, which is about the 6 wives of Henry VIII. And I had never heard of it, but everybody knows about it except me.
And me too. Sorry.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a big deal.
Okay.
And it's all women, and there's the 6 wives of Henry VIII who got beheaded, and they have a rock band on the stage with them, and they belt out these incredible numbers. And I took her into it. I've never seen her so excited in her life because we hadn't planned it. And now when she comes home after school, I get my phone out and, go to Amazon Music, and I play her 6, and she just sits there singing along with it. And then a little while later, she'll be singing. She wants to hear the album that Jeannie and I met over, which is Abbey Road. And so she says, but I want the actual album. And so we play that one, and she sings along. And then she does exactly the same thing with pieces of Handel's Messiah. And Beethoven's the fourth movement, when the choir get the part you do.
Friday,
yeah, and I've never told her, oh, well, this is just pop music. We're gonna, that's okay, but let's do classical. I don't make any aesthetic judgments for her at all.
No.
I just play what she wants to hear. And she's so enthusiastic about it. Whereas in my household, it was all classical because my parents believed that rock and roll and jazz were sort of the devil's music. It was theological. We didn't do any of that. I had to discover that as a teenager when they loosened up a little. So that's a long rambling answer. So lastly, because you asked me that, now I have to ask you this. What does music, forget that you're a singer, but music itself mean to you? And I'm not looking for some big, special thing. I'm just curious. Just music.
Music. Oh, I can't answer that question. It's too big. Now I get totally blocked. It's so nice to be blocked. I don't have an answer.
Okay. There we are. She does it for a living, but doesn't have an answer. And I write.
It's my life. It's like, how is your blood system? How is that important for you? I mean, it's my blood.
Yeah, but you know what? I'll be honest. If you asked me what writing means to me, I couldn't say anything.
No, I don't know anything else.
I don't either.
It's my purpose.
Right.
Basically.
Too. Yeah. Okay. So there you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So the guy who writes and isn't a musician, doesn't know anything, rattles on for 10 minutes about what it means to him. The actual opera singer is blah. Okay. That's it. We're done.